boy, you can talk a whole week just on this subject, which is none other than cancer, the big C. And I'm going to let you know right now, the world of cancer is so vast, it's so broad, that you can spend many, many days going over this subject and talking about it in various forms, from skin cancers to obviously abdominal, and the list goes on. So we can't exhaust it, but I believe we're going to get some very fundamental, very foundational principles tonight that's going to really help us to understand what the disease is, what are some things that can cause it, what are some ways to prevent it, and if we have it, what are some ways to overcome it. This is basically what you're going to notice is thematic throughout our time together, all throughout the week. All throughout our week thus far, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, and now cancer, whenever we're dealing with the subject of a Western debilitating lifestyle disease, we're always going to try to hit those 4 points. What is the disease? What are its causes? What are ways to prevent it? And lastly, what are ways to overcome it if we have it? So these are going to be the things that we're going to talk about even tonight as we get ready to go through our subject of cancer. And as we get ready to do this, as has been stated night after night, not only am I privileged to be a lifestyle educator, a certified health and wellness coach, but I'm also a minister. And therefore, there are times where I recognize the importance of having God in the picture when we're trying to address these things. And so, as has been our custom, I always like to offer a word of prayer before we begin, just to ask for God's blessings. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to ask if we could just bow our heads, and we're going to have a word of prayer, and then we're going to jump right into our subject. Our Father in heaven, Lord, I want to thank you so much for blessing us to make it through another day and still having the gift of life flowing throughout our bodies. We're grateful that we can talk about a subject, the number 2 killer in our nation, cancer. Lord, I pray that you might bless us with wisdom, with knowledge, and with understanding, so that as we go over this subject, we will get some keys, some good gems that will enable us to know how to ward off this disease, or if we have it, by your grace, how to overcome it. Bless us now to this end, and be with all of those who are on their way, and help them to arrive in safety. We ask it all in Christ's name. Amen. Well, well, well. One of the things that I want to do is try to just give us an understanding. In a general sense, there was a gentleman that I met many years ago. He was an awesome professor at a college, and he had cancer, but he had one called mesothelioma. And this one was something that was kind of like a moldish type of thing that was growing in his mid-region. It wasn't so much a tumor, because typically when you think of cancers, you think of tumors. But nevertheless, not all cancers are the same. So it is that as we get ready to watch this little video here, I want us to just take a look at how cancer is developed in the bloodstream and ultimately in the system affecting our organs and our entire bodies. And then when I come back, we'll go ahead and talk about it a little more. Okay? Here we go.
This animation will show how cancer develops. Cancer is caused by the cells of the body changing so that they grow in an uncontrolled way. Click the navigation arrows below the animation screen to play, pause, rewind, or fast forward the animation. Your body is made up of cells. Nearly all the cells in the body have a nucleus, which is the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains genes, which control everything about the cell, including how the cell grows and when it will die. Damage to genes is the underlying cause of cancer. The damage may be inherited or caused by other factors, such as cigarette smoke. The cells of your body divide to make more cells, so that your organs and tissues can grow and repair themselves. The nucleus controls this division. In cancer, the cells divide in an uncontrolled way, and often more quickly than normal cells. In many cases, the cells form a lump called a tumor. Cancerous tumors can spread into surrounding normal tissue. Not all tumors are cancerous. Some do not infiltrate the surrounding tissues, nor do they spread to other parts of the body. These are known as benign tumors. Tumours that invade the surrounding tissue and spread to other parts of the body are known as malignant tumours or cancer. Cancer cells can invade blood and lymph vessels. These provide a route for spread to other parts of the body to form secondary cancers. This is called metastasis. This is the end of the animation. Click on the animation screen to watch it again.
And so it is that when we see things begin to go wrong from a cellular level inside of our bodies, you saw the natural way that our cells divide and spread, but then obviously with cancer, things get unnatural, and it begins to divide very rapidly to the point that it can develop something that we call a tumor. And are all tumors cancer? No, okay, so there are some tumors that are benign, and then there are some that's malignant. The word benign is where you go, phew. The word malignant is where you go, okay, we got to take this seriously, all right? So whenever we hear that word malignant, we know that we're dealing with cancer. Well, there are some leading cancers that affect many of us, and these are some of the things I want to talk about, both from male as well as female. So when we talk about some of the top cancers out there, what are the leading new cancer cases? And these are 2024 estimates that the American Cancer Society told us. For men, take a good look, guys. This is something that we want to pay attention to. This is where we are most susceptible, okay? Is male prostate cancer. We're going to have about 299,010. And the numbers in green are the amount of individuals that will die from the disease, okay? So of the 299,000 that get prostate cancer, there's only 32,250 that will die from that disease. Thankfully, most prostate cancers, if they're caught early and addressed early, can be overcome, all right? So let's continue. Lung and bronchus, colon and rectum, urinary bladder, melanoma of the skin, kidney and renal pelvis, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that's a blood cancer, oral cavity and pharynx, leukemia, and of course, the worst of all, pancreas, the pancreatic cancer, okay? Notice that the pancreatic cancer has the highest death rates compared to any of the others. One of the reasons why, pancreatic cancer is so bad is because abdominal cancers are very silent. They're very much like our opening night. They're silent killers. You will not have any symptoms. If you have pancreatic cancer, it could be developing in your system, and you will not feel anything when it's going from stage 1, stage 2, or even stage 3. Most individuals that end up diagnosed with pancreatic cancer find out at stage 4. And when you find out at stage 4, now we're fighting for our lives. And the lifespan window with pancreatic cancer is very, very small. And so this is the reason why you're seeing such a number where we have 34,530 that get pancreatic cancer, and of that number, 27,270 will die from it. So these are very serious cancers that we just have to pay attention to and know what we're most susceptible to in our society today. When it looks at the ladies, our dear sisters, well, let's take a look here. Again, the same 2024 estimates. What are the cancers that women are most susceptible to as well? Well, take a look. For females, the number one, of course, is breast. When we look at our breast cancer rates, you have 310,000 that will end up with the disease, and then 42,250 will die from it. Number 2 is lung. And that's why that testimony that I shared with you on opening night was so powerful about how I met a lady who had stage 4 lung cancer, but then she ended up overcoming it all by natural remedies. And so thank God that there are things in our world that even though there are some very deadly diseases, there's also some very powerful remedies that exist. And that's what I'm excited to talk with you about tonight. Continuing, colon and rectum as well, uterine, melanoma of the skin, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, pancreas, thyroid, kidney and renal, and then leukemia as well. So unfortunately, there's a lot going on in the world of cancer that affects both men and women, and it's something that we want to pay attention to. Now, The good news is that there are some cancers that will give off symptoms right away, especially when you're dealing with blood cancers like leukemia, like Hodgkin, or pretty much any lymphoma. A lot of those, you will get some symptoms that will let you know, hey, you need to do something about this. It's usually the abdominal cancers where you get almost no symptoms until it has graduated to a certain level. And this is why screening can be very helpful depending on the kind of cancer we're talking about. Screening can be very, very helpful. When I read this article, I thought that this was so powerful because cancer is the number 2 killer in our country. Number 1 is heart disease. But take a look at this point right here. Tell me if you see the clue. You're more likely to get cancer as you get what? As you get older. In fact, age is the biggest risk factor for the disease. More than 9 out of 10 cancers are diagnosed in people 45 and older. Those older than 74 make up almost 28% of all new cancer cases. So there's a connection between age or aging and ultimately developing cancer. Now, we know that there are children that have gotten cancer as well. So we don't want to ignore that fact. But the large body of the research, the large body of data is that as we get older, we become more susceptible. The younger we are, the less that we are susceptible. But let's continue with this thought. There were some statistics that I did some research on that I thought was pretty powerful. Take a look at this. This is very interesting. Did you know 1% of cancer cases are diagnosed in people under age 20? Only 1% of cancer cases. Then 2.7% of cases are diagnosed between ages 20 to 34. Only 2.7%. Then 4.8% of cases are diagnosed between 35 and 44. 11.3% between ages 45 and 54. 24.1% of cases are diagnosed between ages 55 and 64. 29.7% between 65 and 74. Notice it starts to drop. 18.7% between 75 and 84, and only 7.7% of cases are diagnosed in those older than 84. Add up the percentages, and 80.2% of cases are diagnosed in patients older than 55. And 3.7% of all cases are detected in patients younger than 34. So again, the statistics are out. It's very clear. As we get older, all of a sudden we become more susceptible. And the big question for me is why? What is it that's really changing outside of our age? And these are some of the things that I can't wait to talk to you about because, like I told you the other night, I use the term architects. And we know that architects write out blueprints for building things. And you, family, you're architects of your own future. You are the architect of your future. You are going to decide largely, not completely, but largely to what your future is going to look like, especially in the world and the realm of health. Now, I want you to watch this. UK researchers have found that elderly people who get what? Plenty of exercise. Please watch this statistic. It says UK researchers have found that elderly people who get plenty of exercise seem to be staving off the expected decline of their immune systems by about 60 years. Watch this. Data yielded from 125 long-distance cyclists, many of whom were in their 80s, showed that they had the high-functioning, infection-thwarting immune system of 20-year-olds. You see, one of our problems is that as we get older, our immune systems don't always fight the same. We all have cancer cells inside of us. We have cancer cells inside of us right now. But why is it that we don't have cancer? It's because thus far, the army within us is able to help mitigate those cells from actually taking over the body and ultimately developing this horrific disease, especially something called your T cells. And so as a result of that, it's amazing to think that if I can do the things that keeps my immune system up and keeps my body strong, then I have a good chance of keeping cancer away even though I'm aging. Now, this is a very important fact that we all should consider. Let's notice this. I'm going to put some images up on the screen, and I just want you to take a look at this. So this lady right here, she's made some waves on the internet. I don't know how many of you have ever seen her before, but she started to make some changes in her lifestyle. She started to make some changes in her lifestyle. She started to eat a lot of whole foods, plant-based. She decided, I'm leaving meat alone. I'm leaving dairy alone. I'm leaving a lot of the foods that come from animals. She said, if it has a mother and if it has eyes, I'm not eating it. And as a result of that, she began to just eat plants and plant sources. Well, here it is that as she began to do that, she saw some pretty awesome results. She got on the whole food plant-based diet. Great things took place. Well, there was this other lady that came along, and she was pretty interesting as well. You could tell that she was up there in age, but she didn't look like the average woman you saw on the street. She really got into exercise. She started to do a lot of strength training, especially, which is very good as we get older because our bones can become more fragile and weak. The more that you do strength training, that's how you build up your bone density. So here it is that she started to do that. She got really into powerful exercise programs. Well, when somebody interviewed these two women and started to ask them questions, they wanted to know first and foremost, what's your age? Our whole food plant-based diet lady, she was 70 years old. That's a 70-year-old that you're seeing on that screen right there. And that is a pretty young-looking person for 70. The average 70-year-old does not look like how she looks. And then when you think about our dear friend who was doing all of this power training, she was 80 years old. And here it is that, these people were doing great, and there was no disease flowing through their body of any kind, including cancer. My daughter Kayla and I had a chance to go and do some mission work. And one of the places that we went to, which is a place that I love to go to, is the Philippines. And when I went to the Philippines, I went to Bacolod. There's a lot of beautiful history at this wonderful place. And when I was in Bacolod, we did a lot of mission work out there. We were instruments of blessings to a lot of people, young and old, and it was super exciting. But one of my most exciting parts of the trip was when we took a ride up the mountains. Beautiful nature, scenes of nature was just gorgeous. And as we went up the mountains, we got a chance to meet a lady. Her name was Susan. And as we met Susan, that's my daughter Kayla, when we met Susan, we got a chance to talk with her through a translator. She talked Tagalog, and I did not understand it well. But nevertheless, as we started to talk with her, I started to inquire of her age because we couldn't help but to notice she was walking everywhere. As soon as she heard that a child was coming in the room, even though my daughter was, she was an adult still here, but, she knew that it was a young person, she immediately grabbed her harmonica and started to play her harmonica, and she was just so hospitable. Well, as we got to talk a little bit, I asked her, I said, what's your diet like? She says, I eat only whole food, plant-based. Okay. Do you exercise? She says, oh, yes, I walk everywhere. And listen, the mountain that we were on, that mountain's like this. You can't, if you go outside and walk, going up is going to be a task. Well, here it is that she was walking. She says, I walk all the time, everywhere. I said, okay, how much sleep do you get? She says, I sleep beautifully every night. I go to bed at 7 p.m. every night. And I'm just thinking to myself, wow, this lady got it going on. Well, here it is that I asked her, how many diseases do you suffer from? She said, none. How many medications are you taking? None. And then we got to the drum roll question. Susan, how old are you? And this is her age. She is older than what you've seen over the past 10 years in the Guinness Book of World Records. Everybody who's always 110, 112, 115, 117 or something to that effect, this lady was 124. And here it is, completely disease-free. She had an immune system like an animal. I mean, her immune system was like a young, healthy athlete. And she never was afflicted with any of these diseases. She lived a simple life. She breathed in the pure, fresh air of the mountains like you all did. That's one of the reasons I'm sure you all are here in this white mountain. It's because of the pure, fresh air and all these things. She was enjoying that over there in Bacolod, Philippines. Well, here it is that not only did I get a chance to meet her, but that's her 93-year-old son. And I'm thinking about keeping the family together. Talk to me. I'm like, man, could I extract some of your blood and like inject it in mine? I'm just thinking like, wow, I met her 88-year-old daughter. And so this was incredible. All living the same lifestyle, all following the same thing. See, I'm making the point that just because we get older, because when we think about cancer, cancer is a disease that especially by way of statistics, it especially is attacking as we get older. But why? It's because as we get older, we start to move less. We start to compromise our systems. Our systems become weaker, but here we have people who are breaking all of the statistics. They're saying, hey, I can be 70, I can be 80, I can even be 124, and I can still have the immunity of a 20-year-old, even a 20-year-old athlete. So when those cancer cells try to rise up and take over, they have a system that says, you're going to have to find another place to do that. Not here, not today. And so it is that cancer doesn't have to be the death sentence that a lot of us often think that it is. It doesn't have to be something that has to be a part of our lives. But what I'm also seeing is going to require, if we really want to make sure that cancer does not rest, rule, and abide in each and every one of us, we're going to have to be something very important. It's a word that I'm learning, whether it's in marriage, whether it's in health, whether it's in finances, it doesn't matter what it is. This word I'm realizing is such an important word, and it's called intentional. You got to learn to be intentional. These diseases do not have to take over our lives, but you got to be intentional. Let me tell you a story about my mom, my lovely mother, Miss Lorraine Lemon. Well, Mom ended up getting cancer, right? She got cancer, started out breast cancer, cut off the breast, okay, fine. And then the cancer came back, ended up going to her lungs, and then it went from her lungs to her brain. She had 8 lesions on her brain. So now Mom is in really bad shape. The doctor said, we're going to go ahead and start doing chemotherapy. But my mother, she put a lot of trust in me as her son. And so she said, son, whatever you recommend I should do is what I'm going to do. So when I was with her meeting her doctor, we told the doctor, doctor, before my mother takes on these pharmaceuticals, we'd like to first take a nutraceutical approach. The doctor immediately looked away from me. He was so disrespectful. He looked away from me and was like, don't believe this stuff. That stuff doesn't work. And my mother looked confused. Now, when I saw that, I had to step up a little bit. And I remember I went in front of my mother to put her behind me so her eyes were no longer on the doctor. And I said, Mom, I said, we're going to leave now. And then the doctor was like, that stuff doesn't work. And as we're leaving, I said, hey, doc. And then he turned around. I said, I look forward to making you a believer. And then he snarled at me. He was like, and then he just left the room. So we began our project. We had a lady come on down to work with my mother, Miss Patsy. One of the most godly women, most amazing women I've ever met in my life. And Patsy began to work with my mother. She began to make all of these poultices. One of the key poultices she made was out of tofu. Imagine that. And she would literally put these pulses right there on her temple, because remember, she had these lesions on her brain. She would do hydrotherapy treatments and give her these diets and everything. My mother ate meat. My mother had a horrific diet. But now my mother was on a whole food, plant-based diet. Miss Patsy had her walking every day, and so on. She did all of this for 16 days. After 16 days, I called my mom. I said, Mom, how are you doing? She said, Dwayne, I'm doing fantastic. I mean, like, she had all of this energy in her voice. She says, I'm doing amazing. She says, I feel so good. I haven't felt like this in such a long time. And I said, Mom, wow. She says, Dwayne, the lesions on my brain caused me to lose strength in my left arm. She says, now my left arm is as strong as my right arm. She said, I have clarity of thought. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to go see the doctor. I want to get another CT scan. She went and got a CT scan done. This was 18 days later. When she had the CT scan done, the same doctor that was in the room with her, the same doctor that said, this stuff doesn't work, that doctor had to take that report and come to my mother And I remember that once he started stuttering, and he doesn't stutter, I said, oh boy, this is going to be good. And that brother ended up saying to my mother, Mrs. Lemon, when doctors say a lot, you know something's really, really capturing their mind. He said, I don't know how to explain this. All 8 lesions are gone. 18 days. 18 days of treatment. All 8 lesions gone. And do you remember what I told the doctor when he was leaving the room? I said, I look forward to doing something. What did I say I look forward to doing? I said, I look forward to making you a believer. He couldn't deny it. He couldn't. My mother's cancer was running away from her body. She was overcoming. And all of these things that I'm sharing with you tonight, and then some, these were the things that she was doing. And so you'd be amazed. It's like your body is in begging mode sometimes. Your body is just begging. It's saying, please, please, give me what I need. And if we just gave our bodies what it needs, you'd be amazed at how much our bodies would respond and literally start fighting a lot better. Not merely cancer, but our diabetes, our hypertension, and many, many other diseases that we battle with. Just give the body what it needs. So what we're learning here is that, man, age does not mean that you have to become weak and feebled and susceptible to just anything that comes across your path. Doesn't mean that necessarily. But let's continue. The Bible always said something that was very interesting about blood. It talked about life. In Leviticus 17:11, the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood, which means that if you really want to be healthy, you want to take care of yourself at a very cellular level. If you want a healthy life, you need to have healthy blood, okay? So I'm always thinking, what are the ways that I can make sure that I'm producing the healthiest environment inside of my body? All those wonderful blood cells. How can I make sure that I'm keeping it healthy in here so that life can constantly burst through me? Well, there are 5 needs of the cell. These are things that you want to make sure you're always giving to your body. Take care of yourself at a cellular level. Don't just merely think about what feeds your palate, what feeds your tongue. Think about what feeds my cells. Whatever I do in the name of lifestyle, how is it going to feed my cells and help me to get well? Because first comes the cells, then comes the tissues. After the tissues, then comes the organs. After the organs, then comes your systems. Then comes your systems, then it makes up the body. So the more that I take care of myself at a cellular level, I know that it's going to help everything else fall in place. So what are the 5 things that the cells need? Oxygen, pure fresh air. It needs hydration, water, water, water. It needs nutrients. It needs to effectively eliminate waste because we live in a toxic world. So your body has to also be able to eliminate waste very well. Okay? This is how we keep a healthy system. And then lastly, keep the poisons out. That's especially for your army within, okay? Your immune system. Now, when we talk about oxygen, there are a few things to consider. The first one is obviously what you did. You moved out here for many reasons, and I'm trusting that one of the reasons you live out here in the White Mountains is because of the pure, fresh air. But there are some of us that don't spend a lot of time outside, do we? Some of us keep our windows shut. Well, what's another way that we can get pure, fresh air around us for all of those hours that we're inside of our homes? Here's something you can do. Add some beautiful plants. Look at these plants. These plants are not just beautiful, but they actually purify the air that you breathe. There are lots of things. If you're living inside of a trailer, if you're living inside of a regular stick-built home, if you're living inside of a log cabin, whatever structure you're living in, there's a lot of toxins that comes from the paint, that comes from the logs with the staining, that comes from the rugs or the carpets that are on the ground that we walk on. There's a lot of toxicity that comes from various chemicals. So what can we do? Purify the air even in your home. Make sure you're always getting pure, fresh air. When you go outside, you're obviously getting it. But when you're inside, you want to make sure that you're getting it too. And one of the easiest ways to do that, fill it up with some of these airs. Look at the lady palm. It improves indoor air quality. Or even at the bottom here, look at the Boston fern. It removes indoor air pollutants, particularly formaldehyde. Can you imagine that? Plants that are beautifying our home, but it actually works almost like Jesus. It takes in our bad and gives us its good. That's what Jesus did. He literally took on our bad. He took on our sins. And then what did he give us in return? He gave us his righteousness. It's the same thing with these plants. They take in all of the bad stuff in the air. It takes it in. And then what does it give you back? Beautiful, pure oxygen so that you can breathe it in and have good, abundant health and feed your cells with what it needs. So one of the things that I want to encourage you all to do is do everything possible. Crack open your windows. Let some fresh air get in. Let some bad air get out. Fill your house with some of these beautiful plants that are very inexpensive, but they do so much good for us. Try to get that in. That helps your cells in a great way. Practice good deep breathing. There's something called 4-7-8. How many of you are familiar with that? 4-7-8. Dr. Wheel taught us this. In 4-7-8, it simply means you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, slowly exhale for 8 seconds. 4-7-8. It does wonders if you're battling with panic a lot, if you're battling with anxiety a lot. It does wonders for that. But nevertheless, practice some deep breathing so you can get in that pure, fresh air. In addition to that, the other things that the cell needs. Again, it needs water and nutrients. Now, you all have natural elimination channels. How many have ever done a cleanse before? Anybody did that before, a cleanse or a detox, right? Typical cleanses, when you typically do a cleanse, you're going to take something at the end of the day for the colon called psyllium husk. That's what's going to go ahead and kind of clean out the colon and get some residue out and things of that nature. Then, if you're trying to purify your blood, you're more than likely going to take a product called bentonite clay. And it's going to be, it's going to be the base of the two ingredients that you're going to take. Bentonite clay for purifying the blood, psyllium husk for cleaning out the colon. I'm not here to put down cleanses. You can do that. But here's the thing. Your body wants to cleanse every day. And you know how the body cleanses? Through elimination channels. These are your elimination channels. Your colon, your liver, your urinary system, your respiratory system, your skin, and your lymphatic system. Why? Because we have a lot of toxicity that builds up. Again, you breathe in the foul air sometimes if you got trucks that drive by, cars that drive by, you got certain chemicals and things. If you're breathing that stuff in, you got some toxicity exposure. Well, take a look here. Conventional medicine does not acknowledge toxicity as an important issue, but many studies have shown this to be the underlying cause of many chronic symptoms experienced today, including the rising rates of cancer over the past 2 decades. An article in the New York Times discusses the major risks of everyday contaminants in our bodies, and a statement made by the International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics claims that these toxins are interfering with reproductive health. Okay? So this is why toxicity is a very serious thing. Continuing with this, it says emerging evidence ties endocrine disrupting chemical exposure to 2 of the biggest public health threats facing society, diabetes and obesity. The Endocrine Society said in announcing its 50-page scientific statement, it added that mounting evidence also ties endocrine disruptors to infertility, prostate cancer, undescended testicles, testicular cancer, breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, and neurological issues. Sometimes these problems apparently occur in adults because of exposures decades earlier in fetal stages. So again, older adults. Your body wants to eliminate waste. That is how we were created. You take waste in, somehow it comes in through what we're breathing, through what we're exposed to. What's important is getting it out. So watch this. With your colon, you have defecation. That's why it's important to have healthy bowel movements. This is how you prevent a lot of these diseases from rising. Make sure you're having healthy bowel movements. And I can give you a little clue. If you ever watch a precious little baby, right? Their bodies operate the way we're supposed to operate. If you look at a precious little baby, A baby has bowel movements according to its meals. If you ever watch a child, a baby has bowel movements according to its meals. If a baby has 3 meals, it's going to have 3 bowel movements. If it has 2 meals, it's going to have 2 bowel movements. If it has 4 meals, it's going to have 4 bowel movements. Now, let's go ahead and fast forward to us adults. When you think of yourself, think about this. You can know if you're having good defecation experiences by, number 1, are you having bowel movements equivalent to your meals? If you're having 1 meal a day, you should have at least 1 bowel movement a day. If you're having 2 meals a day, you should have at least 2 bowel movements a day. If you're having 3 meals a day, you should have at least 3 bowel movements a day. If you're having 4 meals a day, you're having too many meals. And we need to change something about that, okay? You want to eat in harmony with digestion. And so again, defecation is very important. And like I showed you yesterday, the Bristol stool chart, you want to make sure that when you go to the bathroom, that it comes out like the shape of your colon, okay? That's letting you know you're having good elimination. That's getting waste out. You don't want waste to stay in. You want the waste out. But then you have the urinary system. That's urination. That's also going to be very important. That's why we drink a lot of water. The more water you drink, the more you will naturally urinate. You also are getting waste out. Then you have your respiratory system. That's exhalation. That's why you want to practice good deep breathing. You breathe in pure fresh air. You breathe out poison, carbon dioxide. You're breathing that out. So that's why it's good sometimes to practice good breathing technique. Have good posture. Make sure that that diaphragm is going in and out when you breathe. That allows you to eliminate waste. We're talking about, I'm not here to knock cleansing. I believe in cleansing. I do cleansing at least once a year. When I read my Bible, at least once a year, God cleansed the whole sanctuary. Is that right? So I don't mind. Once a year, I go through a cleanse. So I believe in cleansing. But what is our natural way to cleanse? It's making sure you're having good defecation, good urination, good exhalation, and also good perspiration. Now, what's the easiest way to perspire? What are we going to have to do? We're going to have to exercise. You see that? You see, if we were doing these things on a regular basis, it's actually giving your body that advantage that it needs and that it wants so you can keep a lot of these bad things away from us. So you want to ask yourself, am I having good defecation? If not, start working on it. Start getting more fiber in your diet. Start drinking more water. Start moving more so you can get that peristalsis going and get ultimately the waste to start moving through and eventually going out. If you're not exercising, start exercising so you can get that sweat going on and you, again, can eliminate waste. This is how your body is made to operate. Now let's continue. 2 things to always remember when we're thinking about battling cancer and staying away from cancer and avoiding cancer. 1, don't ignore your symptoms. Please don't do that. That's how a lot of people get in trouble. They go through a symptom. If you remember yesterday, we talked about this. If something abnormal is happening to you and is going on for 2 weeks or more, that is indicative, hey, check that out. If you have a growth on your body, especially if there's no pain, but you touch it and it's a hard lump, it's like, hey, you know what? If it doesn't go away, you don't know where it came from, you might want to say, let me at the very least check this out and just find out what this is and make sure I'm good. But don't ignore your symptoms. If you have an annoying cough, but you don't have a cold, you don't have a fever, you don't have any sickness, but you got this annoying cough that just won't go away, you might want to say, man, this has been going on for a couple of weeks now. Maybe I should check this out. So don't ignore your symptoms, all right? Because sometimes the symptoms could be something telling you, hey, there's something serious going on in your body and you want to catch it. Number 2, get rational screening. Don't start getting tested every time you cough. Again, like I told you, in case there's any hypochondriacs in the room, please don't do that. You're gonna make a lot of big bills, okay? It's like, make sure you get rational screening. If you notice that screening is necessary, then go ahead and get it, because sometimes that can be the telltale story that lets you know maybe we have something serious we have to address. If someone has cancer, what's the first step that we've been learning? Ascertain the cause. Remember that. ascertain the cause. We learned that the Bible even teaches us the curse without a cause. That's what causeless means. The curse causeless shall not come. Therefore, the cause which I know not, I'm going to search it out. When we are stricken with cancer, you want to ascertain the cause. Why? Because your cure is typically in your cause. Whatever caused it, if you address that, then by God's grace, it can go away. So remember, always ascertain the cause. So one of the most reputable organizations in our nation is the Mayo Clinic. And when we look at the Mayo Clinic, they often have wonderful statements to let us know about a lot of the issues with various diseases in our world. Well, when we go to the Mayo Clinic and ask the question, what are the causes of all these cancers? Here's their answer. Colon cancer. In most cases, it's not clear what causes colon cancer. Oh, okay. Well, let's try that again. Breast cancer. Well, it's not clear what causes breast cancer. This is literally from their website. They make it very clear. And we're not sure. Interesting. Then, liver cancer. It's not clear what causes most cases of liver cancer. I was like, man, we're batting 1,000 here. Let's try again. Prostate cancer. Nope, it's not clear what causes prostate cancer. I was like, ay. And then lastly, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, blood cancers. Doctors aren't sure what causes lymphoma either. This is very frustrating because, again, the idea is that a lot of us just want to have our symptoms treated. But the reality is that if you really want to overcome your disease, you want to address it from the cause. What's causing my cancer? Well, if we find here that even amongst the highest of professionals, they're really not sure, then what we need to do is start looking outside of that box. And so I'm going to go ahead and give you some out-of-the-box thinking of some things that can contribute to cancer, causing cancer, and let's talk about that. Possible causes of cancer. One cause of cancer is when the DNA in healthy cells becomes sick. That's a fact. By our habits of life, we are creating an internal environment that will either feed cancer or starve it. Do you believe that? That is a fact. That is a fact. Suppressed and inefficient immune systems can cause cancer in the system. 100,000 cells in the body become cancerous every day, but the immune system keeps us from developing cancer. So some of the things that you want to be mindful of is anything that negatively impacts my immune system is something that I want to avoid because it can make me more susceptible to developing cancer. So what are some of the things that can affect the immune system negatively? Number one, negative emotions. When you are constantly entertaining the thoughts of guilt, constantly entertaining the thoughts of anxiety, depression, and stress, when you and I go through this, not from an acute standpoint, but from a chronic standpoint, long term, it can literally suppress the immune system from functioning as powerfully as it's supposed to. And this is one of the reasons why beginning next Monday, we're going to be meeting at the Sholo Church, and we'll provide you with the address. But beginning next Monday, we're going to spend that whole week on how to effectively combat mental health disorders. How to effectively combat. If you know anybody that's battling with depression, with bipolar disorder, panic attacks, anxiety, and the rest, if you know people that are battling with that, we definitely should get some time together next week. We're going to talk about simple, evidence-based, natural remedies and things in lifestyle that you and I can do that can help us have not just healthy bodies, but healthy minds. Because here what we're seeing is that if we allow our negative emotions to control us, it can negatively affect our immunity. And if our immune systems are negatively impacted long term, it can make us more susceptible of not fighting off those cancer cells as effectively as the body wants to. And we can end up very, very sick. This is the reason why, family, we have a verse that is so powerful. It means the world to me. Isaiah 26 and verse 3. Thou will keep him in what kind of peace? Who couldn't use more of that? Do you have perfect peace? I'm not talking about momentary peace, where somebody can steal it from you in just a decision. But do you have a peace that passes all understanding, that even when you should be sad, you're not? That is something that God says, no, that's my thing. God says that belongs to me. Anybody who wants to have a peace that is so powerful that even when you should be depressed, you're not depressed, that is a God thing. And so he says, here's the formula. I will give you perfect peace, but it's only when your mind is locked, stayed on me, because you trust me. I guarantee you, the more we learn to trust God, it will help us manage very effectively those negative emotions. And if any of you want to talk to me about how to do that, that's why you have those white cards on your table. You fill them out, you go ahead and say, hey, I would like to have a consultation. I want to talk about how can I start getting better control of some of these negative emotions so that I can have the most abundant life possible, okay? Continuing. There's a reason that a merry heart does good like a medicine, so this is why we got to overcome those negative emotions. Also, meat eating. Now, especially red meat. Red meat is also recognized by the World Health Organization, and let's talk about it. The World Health Organization has classified processed meats, including ham, bacon, salami, and frankfurts, as a group 1 carcinogen known to cause cancer. I want you to think about that. These are food groups that are group 1. They are known to cause cancer. What are they again? Ham, bacon, salami, frankfurters. All of these are what's called group 1 carcinogens known to cause cancer, which means that there's strong evidence that processed meats cause cancer. Eating processed meat increases your risk of bowel and stomach cancer specifically. Red meat, such as beef, lamb, and pork, has been classified as group 2A carcinogens, which means it probably causes cancer. This is one of the reasons why over and over and over again, I'm so glad that churches are catching up with this, because, a lot of churches, for some reason, they ignore the physical being, and they overwhelmingly worry about the spiritual being. But when you read the Bible, God says, no, I care about all of it. So now you got churches that are catching up with this, and science is catching up with this, that, hey, not everything just because you pray over it is good for you to eat. There are some things that when you eat it, it can, you're going to get what you ate, what you put inside of you. So now the data is out. They're showing clear as day that eating a lot of red meat and these type of things are very serious cancer causes, or very probable cancer causes. So because of this, I want to encourage you, if you're really trying to prevent cancer, or if you have cancer and you want to overcome your cancer, you could not make a better decision in the dietary world than to start scaling back from your meat consumption. Start getting more of the food groups that produce life inside of you. All right? Now watch this. The more that you get foods that are whole, plant-based, and nutrient-dense, lots and lots of nutrients, this is what is going to help you to combat cancer. It's going to help you to fight off cancer or its effects. Even if you have cancer, it'll help you to do better. Even if you're on a certain regimen like chemotherapy and otherwise, it'll help you fight better if you assist the body by eating more of these foods. Now, you may have a doctor that tells you don't eat certain foods if you're taking certain drugs, and honestly, this is true. If you're on a blood thinner or something to that effect, you do have to be mindful. So whenever you change your diet, I'm talking to anybody in the room that you may have cancer. If you're going to change your diet, it is something that you do want to talk with your physician about, especially if you're on medications, because certain food groups and medications don't always go well together, all right? And it can cause some problems. But if you're not on any medications, I would recommend this all day long. Try to start eating more whole, plant-based, nutrient-dense foods. The more that you do that, it's going to fill your body with life, and it's going to fill you with the components that helps to build up the immune system and enable you to fight even cancer better, okay? The one thing I will say, however, is if you're going to increase your fruits, your grains, your nuts, your vegetables, there are some times where organic is helpful. We have some things out there that we have to pay attention to, so I want you to watch this, okay?
second time a jury has found Monsanto's Roundup weed killer played a role in causing cancer. Yesterday's unanimous decision determined Roundup caused or was a substantial factor in causing 70-year-old Edwin Hardeman's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Anna Warner is here with how this verdict could affect thousands of other lawsuits claiming the herbicide causes cancer. Anna, good morning.
Good morning. This is just the first phase in Hardeman's case against Monsanto and its new parent company, Bayer, which contends Roundup's active ingredient glyphosate is safe. Attorneys will now go back to the jury to decide whether or not the company is liable and has to pay monetary damages. Edwin Hardeman's attorneys say he started using Roundup products back in the 1980s to treat poison oak and weeds on his property in Northern California. He continued to do so until 2012. 3 years later, he was diagnosed with cancer.
Roundup extended control.
Roundup's manufacturer says its product is not to blame. In a statement, Monsanto's parent company Bayer says, "We have great sympathy for Mr. Hardeman and his family, but an extensive body of science supports the conclusion that Roundup was not the cause of his cancer." The jury disagreed, unanimously deciding that Roundup was responsible. This is the second time a jury has ruled against the product's manufacturer. In August of last year, Dwayne Lee Johnson was awarded $289 million in damages after the court determined Roundup was also a substantial factor in causing his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A judge later lowered that award to $78 million, and Monsanto has appealed. I spoke with Johnson last year. What did that verdict mean to you?
The verdict really meant to me that this thing was not done in vain. And I remember standing there saying to myself, if I lose this case, this company is going to be able to get away, and then they'll be able to say, see, we told you our stuff didn't do that.
Attorneys for Edwin Hardeman say their client is pleased with the verdict. In a phone interview, co-counsel Jennifer Moore says in the trial's second phase, they'll seek to prove Monsanto knowingly misled the public.
They knew for decades that Roundup can cause cancer, and frankly, they just didn't care.
This is a big loss for Bayer and Monsanto. It proves that juries are being convinced that Roundup is causing cancer.
And there's a lot at stake here. Bayer is facing more than 11,000 lawsuits connected to Roundup. Now, it contends the jury's decision Tuesday has no impact on future cases and trials. They say each one is different legally and factually, and says more than 800 studies from around the world confirm the product is safe when used as directed. But there's not total agreement on that. The state of California disagrees.
So I can't stress this enough. When you are going to eat certain food groups, if you're going to eat a food group, especially where the skin is very soft, so I'm thinking like tomatoes, I'm thinking like raspberries and different types of food groups. When the skin is very soft, if they have pesticides in them, you can't wash them. The more you try to wash them, they just start to kind of break down right inside of your hand. And so when it comes to some of these food groups, the best thing you could do is to get it organic, which means that they did not have any of these pesticides on them. So my recommendation, it's just a recommendation, if you're going to eat food groups or, if you're going to start increasing your plant food intake, then I would definitely recommend when it comes to any food group where you're really going to eat the skin of it as well, try to see if you can get it organic. It would be better off because of the fact that these pesticides are quite questionable. I mean, you just saw a video. This is one of many, many, many videos. They have all sorts of videos on glyphosate, and they even have a video of a man who said, glyphosate is so safe that you can drink it straight and nothing will happen. And oh, I love that video. I have that video. I use it in some of my trainings. And literally, the man says, really? And the guy's like, yeah, you can drink it. Nothing will happen to you. The guy says, I have some in the back. Would you mind drinking it right now on the camera for everybody to see? And the guy was like, well, no, I wouldn't do that. And he was like, wait a minute. Why wouldn't you do that? And the guy says, well, I'm not, he actually said this. He says, I'm not stupid. And I was like, do you realize you just said that on camera? Like, he didn't catch himself. And here it is that the guy actually said that. And he said, come on, I mean, drink it. And the guy says, look, if you try to keep forcing me to drink it, this interview's over. And the guy took the microphone and walked out. And it was all caught on camera. And so as you can see, this is why juries are ultimately counting Monsanto and Bayer and these guys as guilty. So listen, we don't want to get caught up. There's an old African proverb that says, when two elephants fight, the grass gets hurt the most. I don't know if you ever heard that proverb before, but it's an awesome proverb. What is the point? When all these big companies start fighting each other and everything, it's the grassroots people like you and I that get hurt the most. And so what we do is we opt out of fighting. We're going to say, no, I'm not going to get caught up in the middle of your fight. While you guys are fighting to say good or bad, I'm just going to avoid it. If I'm eating soft fruits, if I'm eating soft vegetables where I'm going to consume the skin of it as well, I'm doing organic. I'm doing organic. A lot of you got land out here. Start growing your food. That's probably why you moved here, is so you can do things like that. But I just want to encourage you, if you're really trying to stay away from cancer, as well as neurodegenerative diseases. When we talk about neurodegenerative diseases, we're talking about Parkinson's, we're talking about Alzheimer's, we're talking about multiple sclerosis, we're talking about Lou Gehrig's disease. Any of the neurodegenerative diseases, you especially want to do more organic food. Eating a lot of that pesticide-ridden food, it contributes to the development of these diseases. So that's something that we're going to encourage you to do, okay? Is start getting more whole plant foods in, but for the ones where you're going to eat the skin, try to keep them organic. Oranges, bananas, and things of that nature, those you can get conventional. You don't have to get organic. But apples, berries, and so on, you want to see as much as possible, keep those organic. So that way you don't have to worry about taking in and ingesting the pesticides and becoming susceptible to some of these unfortunate realities. When it comes to exercise, activity lowers risk of breast and other cancers. A new report on breast cancer released in May found strong evidence that physical activity lowers the risk for this cancer. Previous AICR reports have found strong evidence that regular physical activity lowers risk of cancers of the colon and endometrium. For all these cancers, the analysis of studies from around the world were consistent and clear. Let's start exercising. We're talking about this. Your heart works around the clock, right? Your heart never stops working, because if it does, well, you and I won't be here anymore. So the reality is this. All you got to do is give it 30 minutes a day. 30 minutes a day where you make your heart work a little harder. If your normal habit is to walk like this, that's your normal habit every day, right? 30 minutes, you're just going to walk like this. Just for 30 minutes. You're just going to get a little bit more pep in your step, all right? HIIT routines. How many of you are familiar with it? HIIT. Oh, you're not many of you. Okay. Here's what HIIT is. You can do HIIT at many different levels, okay? Here's a HIIT routine. There's so many reports showing that if we start to adopt more HIIT types of exercises, it does wonders for our cardiovascular system and our overall health. Here is what HIIT is. HIIT says this. Let's say you do this for 60 seconds. You go like this for 60 seconds, right? Once you get to 57, 58, 59, 60, then you're going to do this for 30 seconds. And then when you do this for 30 seconds, 28, 29, 30, then you go right back to your original pace. And so what you're going to do is you're going to do that like 5 sessions, 10 sessions, 15 sessions of that. You're just going to simply go 1 minute, mild pace, 30 seconds, a little bit faster. Now, here's the best news in the world. You could do it at your pace, because what gets my heart rate up is different from what gets your heart rate up. So for some of us, we might start here. We might start here. That's good. And then when you get to 58, 59, 60, then you go like this. You see that? So you can go at any pace that works good for you, but that's the idea of a HIIT routine. And HIIT stands for high intensity interval training. HIIT, high intensity interval training. So you can decide on how strong and hard or how mild you want to go, but do it just for 30 minutes. 30 minutes a day. And there's all sorts of HIIT routines. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, For, like literally, you decide what exercise you want to do. But the bottom line is get your heart pumping. Get that heart pumping for 30 minutes. Get your heart rate a little bit higher. It does wonders for your body, okay? And the data's out. The more that people do this, you can avoid not only breast, you can avoid colon, you can avoid endometrial, you can avoid so many cancers just by getting in enough exercise, okay? So again, these are things that we can do. As it says, aim for at least 30 a day. In general, the more activity, the lower the risk. Although, like other healthy habits, too much isn't good either. And after a point, those high amounts of exercise don't seem to add more cancer protection. For overall health, government guidelines recommends at least 150 minutes a week of moderate activity and twice a week for strength training. So again, if you do 150 minutes a week, that's 30 minutes a day for 5 days, okay? Just get that in, family. I know how it is. That chair just gets so comfortable, doesn't it? That couch just seems to hug us and not want to let go. But that's when we got to we got to wiggle our way out of that couch. And we got to say, look, I got to go ahead and I got to get some exercise in. And always remember this, the best kind of exercise, you know what the best kind of exercise is, right? The one that you do. That's the best exercise, the one that you do. So do the exercise that works better with you. Do that, okay? Don't worry about becoming Superman and Superwoman. Just do the exercise that gets you going. And please, when you don't feel like exercising, exercise. Okay? When nothing in you wants to do it, just simply because you know it's going to do good for your body, go ahead and start doing it. And I guarantee you this, if you start exercising, you will not regret it after you did it. It's just getting started that's the hard part. Once you do it, you're going to feel great and you're going to be thankful. Inflammation is a major contributor to cancer development. We're not just talking about a growth on our hand or our leg. We're talking about inflammatory markers in the bloodstream, okay? Our immediate reaction to a swelling is to try and decrease it. However, it's important to remember that inflammation is an essential part of the body's attempt to heal itself. The first stage of inflammation is often called irritation, which then becomes inflammation, the immediate healing process. Inflammation is followed by suppuration, discharging of pus, and then there's the granulation stage, the formation of new tissue in a wound during healing, etc. That's okay. This is not okay. This is when it's not okay. Chronic inflammation, over time, chronic inflammation, notice what it can do. It can cause DNA damage and lead to cancer. Chronic inflammation. So this is one of the things you want to watch out for. Now, there are diets, again, a diet that has a lot of sugar, that has a lot of fat, has a lot of animal products, things of that nature. This is what will create a very inflamed environment in our system. All right? So these are foods that fight inflammation. So these are the kind of food groups we want to eat more of. Things like leafy greens, things like olive oil, things like fruits and nuts and vegetables. What are the things you really want to watch out for? Watch out for these guys right here. This is the stuff that will cause our inflammatory markers to go up. Fried foods, sodas, refined carbs, lard, processed meats. That's the stuff that creates an environment in our bodies that makes it very easy for cancer to develop. So when we think about keeping down the inflammation, we want to start pushing these things out more and more and more. There are anti-inflammatory supplements. I always caution you, please be mindful. If you're going to take a supplement, please talk to your physician first, because there are some supplements that if you're on medications and you take the two together, it can make you really sick. Really sick. It could probably send you to the ER or worse. All right? But these are awesome supplements. You know, you got turmeric, your vitamin C, you got ginger, you got your bromelain from your pineapple. There's a lot of great things out there that you and I can take. Right now in the allergy season, a lot of people are taking quercetin. Quercetin is very good for helping to fight against allergies. So if any of you are battling with allergies, you don't know what to do, you can start looking into quercetin. Very, very helpful. Hyperthermia. We're just about done. When you look at hyperthermia, now This is actually exceptionally effective against many cancers, but you need a professional to do this. You do not want to do this without a professional. Hypothermia is also called thermal therapy or thermotherapy. It is a type of cancer treatment in which the body tissue is exposed to high temperatures, up to 113 degrees Fahrenheit. That's very hot. Research has shown that high temperatures can damage and kill cancer cells, usually with minimal injury to normal tissues. By killing cancer cells and damaging proteins and structures within cells, hypothermia may shrink tumors. Typically, even your hospital that's right next to us, we want to see if they have hypothermia treatments. The hospitals in Florida, they actually do hypothermia. Do any of you know what the nickname for hypothermia is? Fever bath. A fever bath. If you sit in a tub at 113 degrees, it's so hot, it won't scald you, but it's so hot that if you sit in it up to your neck, it's literally going to cause your body to get so hard it's going to induce a fever. You're going to go from 98.7 and you're going to start going to 99, 100, 101, 102. This is why I said you need a professional with you, because it's inducing a fever. Do any of you know what happens to your body when you have a fever? It dramatically activates your white blood cells, your immune system, okay? So that's the reason why people do it. But here's the deal. First, this is this is not exactly a fever bath. You're not going to look like that when you do a fever bath. She looks way too relaxed. When you get a fever bath, you're kind of like, whatever. That's more what you're going to look like, because you're literally having a serious fever, okay? But you need to have a thermometer. You need to have ice water nearby because they have to sip it ever so often. You have to have a towel that you constantly keep on the head of the individual. That's why I keep saying you have to have a professional, and that's why I put the picture of a professional there. If you remember Eden Valley, that organization that I told you about on opening night that's in Loveland, Colorado, this is the #1 way that they address their cancer patients. I actually assisted a cancer patient myself. I did it myself. I was a therapist, and I knew exactly what to do. You have to check their SpO2. You have to check their blood pressure. You also have to make sure that you're constantly reinforcing cold on their head. It's a lot involved, but here's what it does. If you can see up there, to your left is the tumor, but to your right, when in a fever bath, it literally destroys the tumor. It's called apoptosis. And so it's an amazing treatment. It's very aggressive, but it really, really works. And so if any of you, God forbid, are ever stricken with cancer and it's getting pretty serious, hypothermia is something you may want to consider as a treatment, okay? Very, very powerful. And like I told you, Eden Valley Institute in Loveland, Colorado does this. So you can get in touch with them. I can easily get you in touch with them. If you have relatives, friends, family, anyone that you know that you want them to get some help, I'll give you their information. It'll be my pleasure to do that. How many of you use infrared saunas? Okay. Infrared saunas, if I could make a recommendation, they come in various budgetary lines. They can be as little as a few hundred. They can be as expensive as a few thousand. Okay? It all depends on which one you get. But infrared sauna treatment is excellent for combating cancers. Undoubtedly, further research in this area would improve understanding, but the available evidence suggests that physicians could consider recommending sweating as tolerated via exercise and or use of a sauna as a low-risk, potentially beneficial treatment for individuals who may be experiencing effects of toxic elements or for individuals with regular exposure to or accretion of toxicants. Sweating offers potential and deserves consideration to assist with removal of toxic elements from the body. Every time I travel, I bring my infrared sauna blanket. You can even get it in a blanket. And then before I go to bed at night, I stay inside of the blanket 160 degrees. You stay inside of there, and boy, you're going to sweat. And those infrared rays are getting right down into those cells, and they do wonders for the body. I've done a boatload of research on infrared saunas. I highly recommend, if it is in your budget, add an infrared sauna to your home. It is something you're going to use till the end of your life, so it'll be a worthy investment. okay? But again, great fighter against many sicknesses and many diseases. But lastly, I'm encouraging everyone to get on what we call God's plan. G stands for godly trust. O stands for open air. D stands for daily exercise. S stands for sunshine. P stands for proper rest. L stands for lots of water. And then A stands for always temperate or always self-controlled. And then N stands for nutrition. The more that we get on God's plan, this type of lifestyle is designed to keep away sickness and disease. When you think of godly trust, you think about, oh, forgive me, I know you all wanted to take a picture. Go ahead. Oh, you're very welcome. I tried to be a gentleman. My wife taught me well. So, God's plan. Everybody got it? Okay, go ahead, take your picture. And family, I can't encourage you enough. It's like the more that we adopt these things in our lifestyle, my hope is that we'll get the same testimony like a lot of these other people, that even as we move from our 50s to our 60s to our 70s and to our 80s, that it doesn't matter what the age is, our bodies, as far as its state of health, is that we have that immunity. We have that system that is very much like a lot of those young folks out there, that young athletes, so we don't have to fall into those statistics that says because I'm older, I have to get cancer. The answer is no, you do not. Because once again, you and I are the architects of our future. Okay? This is where we conclude our presentation for this evening. I'm very grateful that we were able to go over all of these principles that can help us to know that though cancer is real, and though cancer afflicts many, by the grace of God, it doesn't have to afflict us. And if we are afflicted, by the grace of God, it doesn't have to stay with us. Let us be intentional. Like I told you, that special word. Let us be intentional to do what we can to build up this body, which is his temple. And let's take good care of it, and let's enjoy the reward of having perfect, faultless, and abundant health, which is available to us if we're willing to grab it. All right? How many of us learned some things tonight? Did we learn some things tonight? Is it our desire to say, you know what? I want to go ahead and start putting some of these things into practice so that I can have that strong and healthy body. Do you mind if I pray for you for that? Let's pray. Father, I want to thank you so much for everyone who has come out here tonight. Once again, we have learned about how we can take care of our bodies and take charge of our health. I pray that you will bless everyone, indeed, that we might be strengthened and that we will, by your grace, avoid this terrible disease of cancer or overcome it if any of us are afflicted with it. And Lord, I pray that help us to leave here encouraged, inspired, and determined to be intentional about taking charge of our health. Bless us now with safe travels back to our homes and keep us until we meet tomorrow night, for we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a lot about the army within. We know that COVID just ravaged our world, and a lot of people have different views on it, but we're going to talk about how to keep healthy and strong immune systems. So I can't wait to talk about that, the army within. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, and I will look forward to seeing you then. Please get home safely. Good night, and God bless you.